Hello again, and welcome to Herd Immunity News. I'm Marcus Botza. I've got the great pleasure once again in welcoming Mr. Giovanni Di Stefano to our program, or the Devil's Advocate, as some people like to call him. He's been called quite a few names over the years, but we'll keep it polite here. Giovanni has an incredible backstory, and we will leave all the links to that. He's working on a lot of amazing projects at the moment. But without any further ado, can I just say, Giovanni, how are you, sir? And come stai?
Well, so far so good. I've just returned from the Venice Film Festival there, which we'll talk about at the end there if we have time
Yep.
there, and everything is good.
Okay. Bravo. And you're looking well, which is the main thing.
Thank
Now,
you.
what we're going to talk about today is the ULEZ program that's going on in the United Kingdom. This is the ultra low emission zones that's been brought in cities like London, Manchester, Liverpool, Newcastle, Glasgow, Bristol. It's all over. But really, at the center of this fight is London, a place you know very, very well. Now, we're going to look at certain cases, but one that springs out that we've talked about is that of Noel Cox, a scaffolder from Berkhamsted in Hertfordshire. Now, there's also been contention over the signs, the validity of the fines, and the validity of the cameras themselves. Now, you're going to tell us all about that, and you're also going to look at what the rights of the motorist and the British people are. Over to you, sir.
Well, first of all, I am not certain de jure or even de facto whether those signs are legal and are compliant with the Human Rights Act. Now, you may say, what the hell has the Human Rights Act got to do with it? Part of that is the question of privacy and respect for privacy, whether anyone can even start to track you from A to B from the moment you leave your house or whatever. Those are generic situations there. Secondly, is how you tell people that you are being watched. And in the case of Mr. Cox, he was able to convince the tribunal. He failed first in the road users charging adjudicator because there are procedures for challenging those fines. You can go one of two ways. You can make a statutory declaration and hope to God that it pans out, because if it doesn't, it's under penalty of perjury. Or you can go to the road users charging adjudicator, who all in writing or online, you can make your submissions and say, it wasn't me, I didn't know this, that, and the other. If that fails, there is an appeal then to the London tribunals. Now, what's interesting about the whole situation in the United Kingdom is that Inland Revenue, for example, if you live in London, your area will be Glasgow. If you live in Glasgow, your area will be London, to stop you going there and bothering them in the offices. Where do you think that the London tribunals, where would you think a normal person, sane of mind and not suffering from spasms of aberrations, where would you think a London tribunal is based?
In London.
It's based in Nottingham. I mean, like, you know, why make life easy when you can make it complicated there? So the next step is the tribunal. But the tribunal, and this people have to understand crystal clear, they are individual decisions based upon individual facts. They're already there. So it is not binding on anything else and subject to appeal within 30 days or 28 days, I think. And the appeal, of course, is to a higher tribunal, and then ultimately for judicial review in the administrative court. You have stage 1, stage 2, ultimately to the Court of Appeal Civil Division, and ultimately to the Supreme Court if there is a point of law of public importance. And in this case, hell, you know, it's staring at you right in the face there. Now, the other issue is what we call contracts of adhesion. Now, Lord Denning, Tom Denning, who, when I was, you know, very, very young, during the Punic Wars, I actually, sorry, I actually met Lord Denning at his, you know, at his house. He invited me and a few other students there. So, you know, I had tea with him there, and he spoke about contracts of adhesion in a case called Swan versus National Car Park. There's there for a memory of
Mm.
that even though I may have Parkinson's, my memory is still, I didn't leave it there at the hospital gate there.
Bravo.
So Swan National Car Park said this: when there are signs there, you can't have a situation where you take it or leave it. This was to do with someone whose car had been damaged in a car park, and there was a disclaimer on there. Now that's a take it or leave it. Gas contracts, electricity contracts, telephone contracts, they're all contracts of adhesion. And those contracts of adhesion are, he ruled were completely unlawful, because the citizen has absolutely no right whatsoever at challenging them. And I think that this has gone down a similar road as far as statute and precedent law is concerned, because it was a Court of Appeal Civil Division decision which is binding still today, some 60 or 70 years later. Those decisions, unless they're overturned or overruled, are still binding. Unfortunately, the London Tribunal one, good luck to Mr. Cox, well done for him for taking it that. But it is an individual victory. It does not, unfortunately, spread to other people, although other people can use a similar argument, and they may find a sympathetic tribunal that will wipe out, their fine subject to appeal.
Well, indeed, and Mr. Wilcox himself, to put a bit of context and information onto the case, the judge had ruled that the signs were not lawful because they were not clear enough to indicate that there would be a fine.
And that is Swan versus National Car Park.
That's the same.
It's exactly that. The sign was there, but it wasn't quite clear as to what the liability was. That since then, of course, things, they've amended. All they have to do is to amend the signs to be compliant with that. However, there is a however in all of this, a spoke in the wheel, which, Mr. Di Stefano, the devil's advocate, is going to put in. You and I discussed yesterday my tax case of like almost 20 years ago, where the Inland Revenue made an assessment of my tax liabilities at something in the region of £5 million. And I succeeded in defeating that over the Bill of Rights, 1689. Why do you need a new Bill of Rights? Why are they harping on about? You've got one. You just have to apply it. And the Bill of Rights there is a section which clearly says that, without conviction, there can be no fine. Now, for there to be what's happened here is that the government have imposed fines, for example, on the railways. If you don't have your ticket, you get paid the ticket and the fine. In my view, in the same way that I defeated the Inland Revenue and wiped £5 million off, of course, they came after me in different ways there, and I paid probably a heavy price. Would have been easier to have paid the £5 million and not had all the hassle that I had there, but it doesn't matter. The Bill of Rights 1689 was a document which is still valid today. I sent you that. It has the same validity today as the day it was signed in 1689 and enacted by James II. Now, James II was the brother of Charles II, whose brother you lot, your little mob there in England, had executed with Cromwell there unlawfully. And that is something that also has interested me, because with the consent of Buckingham Palace, that conviction and that execution, although he's dead and it's done, is being reviewed. I mean, we can't have a king that has a criminal of a great.
Exactly. But just keeping with the ULEZ case, if that's okay, 75% of these fines outside the City of London, so in the expansion zone, have been overturned. So it's essential that the motorists know their rights, Giovanni, and as you're correctly quoting the Bill of Rights that we already have in this country of 1689, the motorists aren't really under any particular obligation to pay a penny,
unless they've been taken to court and there's conviction.
Right.
And that's what the government don't want to do, because they don't want to fill the magistrates' court.
Well, how long will that take if everybody fails to comply?
Well,
Will be done. It's
exactly.
impossible.
You know, the TV license, you get a fine and you go to the magistrate's court. You know,
Right.
if you don't pay your council tax, if it's still called that, or community charge, you're taken to the magistrate's court. Why? To be compliant with the Bill of Rights 1689, to stop some clever dick lawyer like the devil's advocate coming up and wiping 5 minutes. And I did a deal with the Inland Revenue, which I've sent you, so you know, people can't say that, you know, it's not, because you have the documentation there.
Sure.
On the basis that I wouldn't publicize the 1689 Bill of Rights and the section that I used there, they would wipe off my tax and everybody would be happy there. So that's 5 million quid, you know, in my pocket, and £5 million less for the taxpayer. In any case, I wasn't resident in the UK. I'm resident in Monaco. You know, I'm not resident in the UK, so there's no taxation there.
You are. Now, on this whole subject, we just take it a little bit deeper. So we've got your input there. We will leave all the links to the information that is available to our beloved subscribers and followers and listeners, yours and mine, and they can make of that of what they will. Like anything else, the information is power. If it's in their hands, they can do with it whatever they want to. But if I can just get you on the Imperial College London, what I'm suggesting is a conflict of interest. Now, the Imperial College London basically paid a professor, Professor Fuller, to come up with the report to say that 4,000 people a year were dying from the pollution. Now, this has been debunked completely, Giovanni, and it's to say that a public of information request came out and said that only one person had tragically died, but there were a lot of underlying factors. On conflict of interest, shouldn't the candidates for London Mayor that oppose this whole scheme take this to the courts?
Well, they can, but you see, many people, lawyers incidentally, are paid to give opinions based upon how you want that opinion to go. We are called guinea men, because in the old days you were paid a guinea, £1 and 1 shilling, for delivering an opinion favourable to your, you know, to your client or to the cause there. 50 million people died of the Spanish flu, which incidentally was nothing to do with Spain. It's only because a member of the royal family there died that America decided to call it the Spanish flu and not the American flu. Started in America. So those are realities. I don't know how many people died of COVID, certainly not as many as what are professed.
Exactly.
And as far as pollution is concerned, that's been there, you know, since Kingdom Come. You know, people die, you know, people die of. They die, you know, it's unfortunate, but there's more pollution in the 18th century with the Industrial Revolution and the machinery than there is today.
Exactly.
You know, I'm sorry, but, you know, this is something that we have to bear in mind. And no one gave a flying Ferrari about that. No one actually has given a flying Ferrari about anything to do with pollution until the green movement came along. Of course, it's nice to breathe, but the earth is one earth. We have no control of it. You know, there was a wonderful film where in insurance contracts you exclude acts of God, where I think Billy Connolly sued God, didn't he?
Yeah,
through
something like that.
So
now, sorry, I mean, just to get your opinion on this. In Birmingham City Council had to write off 60,000 fines because the people couldn't pay or wouldn't pay. Now, can you see a similar thing happening, that the people will look at this and say, I'm sorry, but you're using flawed science and a flawed narrative to extort money from me purely and simply on the grounds of this climate change agenda, which millions of people around the world are waking up to?
Well, you know, this is an extremely interesting situation. But what's happened, Marcus, is that you are now delving into the motivation of that. I'm saying I'm taking it a step backwards. In the same case of Palmer, I just need to emphasize John Goldfinger Palmer. Why we won that? Because the Crown issued the wrong notice to kick off confiscation. So anything that happened after confiscation was unlawful, and therefore that. It's exactly the same situation here. Those fines and the imposition of them are unlawful because there is no conviction. So it doesn't matter a feather or a fig. who wrote what, where, why, and whatever. It is per se, they are per se de facto unlawful.
Yes.
And if you plead your case on the basis that it's unlawful, consistent with the Human Rights Act, and that you cannot be fined unless you've been convicted or unless there is a proper court, I don't see Sadiq Khan, he's not even a lawyer to start with, but I don't see him as a judge or even as a magistrate, you know. But if they introduced a bill whereby those fines and people who didn't pay them had to go to the magistrate's court for imposition, that's another story. I'd still say it's wrong. I'd still say it's flawed and that, but it would be quasi legal and lawful within the statute and within, you know, English law.
So let's just walk me through this for our viewers, if you would please indulge me. I drive into Glasgow. I've got a out of sync, out of step Audi, and it doesn't comply with the regulations. I come home, I've got a £60 fine. I think to myself, or charge, fine, is probably the better word to say. And I decide to myself, I say, do you know what? I'm not going to pay this. Then I'll probably get a court summons, or, now this shouldn't happen, a call from the bailiffs. What's my next step from there?
Well, the next step from there is, if you, of course, you need money for this, because this is not free and it's not legal aid, you know. And if it just takes one person to take this matter right up to the High Court, the administrative court, the first of all, or even the divisional court, and then the Court of Appeal Civil Division, and you got yourself, you know, one hell of a precedent that can't happen again. It just depends who has the money to be able to do it, because it's not free. Remember, the government, when it comes to fines and magistrates court, bank on the basis that you neither have the time, staff, inclination, or money to fund challenging whatever that they have invoked. It happens in prisons. 99% of prisoners haven't got the money to challenge anything.
Right.
You know, you're looking at 100,000 people. You're lucky if 100 people could write a check, if they still exist, of £100 and it's still clear. You're lucky. It's the poor people that suffer, not the rich.
Indeed.
The rich are in the minority.
Indeed.
So your step would be to obtain a stay, and then you would make an application. I would probably make an application directly to the High Court on a question of compatibility. That, in other words, that the regulation, because it's not legislation, it is a regulation, has got F all to do with Parliament. Parliament enacts statute, ministers enact regulations and statutory instruments, but they are challengeable because they are not the will of Parliament. They are the will of the individual minister. And you would then take the matter to the High Court on a question of compatibility with the Human Rights Act and with the Bill of Rights 1689 and that section, and, you know, expose that. Now, whether the government would challenge that, I mean, they got, remember, they are using your money to defeat you for your legitimate purposes. They're not using their own money. There's a lot to be said for ministers being responsible for their own actions. That will never happen, but there's a lot to be said for that.
I mean, indeed. I mean, there have been amendments made to the Bill of Rights. We should point out in 1998, there was amendments done to Article 10 to say,
but not to our article.
Well, yeah, indeed, and that the European Court of Human Rights also comes into play. And I know you are an advocate of the European Court of Human Rights because you say it's a sort of safety net when other legal systems fall down.
Ish. It is a safety net. Britain opts out of everything. They reserve the right not to listen to them and to abide by. That's challengeable. I mean, I had the case of Dowsett, as I said before. Poor Mr. Dowsett, you know, was in prison for 22 years. The person who did the murder was only 8 years because he refused to accept his conviction. We won hands down in the European Court. We won in the completely, totally hands down. Would they listen? Would they? Hell. You know, and this is why I say the Court of Appeal Criminal Division is no longer fit for purpose. I was talking to a few QCs last night on this issue, who are my friends. One ex-Lord Justice of Appeal, you know, who is my friend, who I used to instruct when he was a barrister. It is no longer fit for purposes. Barristers are terrified of going to the Court of Appeal. They are badly treated. They are abused in the Court of Appeal. And it is pandemic. Only 2% of cases actually succeed, whereas you have a 30% appeal rate there. It is absolutely disgraceful. The Court of Appeal Criminal Division is of statute. It is a child of statute. There was a Criminal Appeal Act, 1907, 1966, 1968. That it is fundamentally important that the Court of Appeal get back on track, listen to appeals, and adjudicate those appeals consistent with the law, not the policy that for friends we interpret the law and for the public we apply the law, which is what is happening there. And it needs to be addressed.
Yes,
and the
does.
ULEZ case there will be one that will fall foul of the Court of Appeal. They will rule against it there because it's a government and that's what my fear is. We need to have independent tribunals, independent of the government. Don't be misled, Marcus, by the fact that now and then the government lose. It's all a sham. They lose cases that they don't give a damn, but important cases, that, I mean, the prerogative of Parliament, who gave a flying hoot about that there? No one cared, but they spent a lot of money on that there. But the important cases on extradition, the Extradition Act with America is not consistent, with equality of arms. Try and extradite an American to the UK.
Well, look, but I mean, the legal system in the UK is one thing, but the policing system is another. As we've chatted about in the past, 95% of crimes in London, for example, go unresolved. 95% of police officers are chasing internet criminals because someone said a man's a woman and a woman's a man, or vice versa. And you actually have a complete mess and collapse in the policing. And then look at the other side, you've got a complete mess and collapse where serious criminals are sometimes not even seen because there's such a backlog in the courts.
Well, for example, the charging capabilities now in white-collar crime, unless it's more than £1,000,001, it won't even get, nothing's going to happen there. There are thresholds there. The serious farce office, as I call it, not the serious fraud office, hasn't won a damn case there. They employ people who are incapable, that people who don't, who are just they're youngsters, 24, 25 years of age. What the hell do they know about that? The CPS are in the similar situation there. There was talk that they wanted their own specific barristers that would do nothing but prosecution. That, of course, fell foul because of the payment. They're not prepared to pay people properly. And for the first time, lawyers went on strike last year there. Some say they're permanently on strike because they don't do bugger all, but
I'd agree with that. Well, look, just to get you, we've got you for half an hour, maybe another 10 minutes, but if I can just please ask you to give us your views on the COVID inquiry. I don't know what you've seen about this. This is being presided over by Judge Hallett, and many people are saying that this is a complete whitewash. The government narrative hasn't changed. We should have locked down earlier. We should have done more to take away people's liberties and freedoms. Have you been looking at this case, this inquiry?
It's personal to me because Heather Hallett was given that position on the basis that she ruled in my own case for the government. So I know Heather of old. First of all, she should have recused herself there. And when I say I know her, she's an extremely able lawyer. But what happened was that, unfortunately, and I'm saying it publicly now, because she wasn't made Lady Chief Justice, it was given to Ian Burnett, who was only a Mr. Justice. She threw her toys out the pram and, she resigned from the bench there. And she'd already ruled in my case in a manner which was not consistent with the law. I forgive her for that there. We've had correspondence, she and I, since then, my situation has been resolved in a positive manner. But she was given that job therefore there. That is a complete sham of a situation.
It is.
Because there should have been no lockdowns at
Yes.
all. Your name there is herd immunity, isn't it?
It is, sir.
HINU.
Yes.
That was the policy that was adopted during the Spanish flu, during the Black Death, that, and all the other. There is a pandemic every 100 years in the world. You know, whoever it is that runs the power with a capital P that Robbie Burns spoke of. I would the power that gifty gears to see ourselves as others see us. There, whichever power runs the world needs a cleanup every 100 years, and he gets it either through a war or he gets it through a pandemic. There, this inquiry will achieve nothing. And if there are any more pandemics, I'm telling you one thing, I will not comply. I will refuse to be locked up in Italy, Monaco, wherever the hell I am. I will refuse. And if I have to go to jail, well, you know, it's easy peasy for me there.
I'll see you there. You can teach me Italian. I'll see you there, my friend.
Do you remember that? See you, Jimmy.
Well, I'll see you there, Jimmy. And you could teach me Italian and I'll teach you a few words in Gaelic. Or maybe we could write a whole series of books together about this whole pantomime that we're seeing unraveling before our face. But you mentioned Robbie Burns, and may I mention to some of our a little bit more discerning viewers, The Tempest, the Tempest, in which
Shakespeare.
There is a line, exactly, dear boy, exactly, and there is a line that said, you know, adversity does maketh very strange bedfellows. So for anyone.
It also says, those were the pearls that were his eyes.
It does indeed. And this was Trinculo. And Trinculo was saying this to a character called Stefano, believe it or not, in the play. So the ironies just keep coming and coming, dear Giovanni. They really do. And that's just for any of those discerning viewers that may be saying, questioning who I'm interviewing or who I'm speaking to. This is free. We live in a free world. And anytime I recognize the talent, it won't stop me talking to anyone. Don't know what your views on freedom and free speech.
Well, I believe in free speech. I don't block anyone on Twitter or on Facebook. They can say what the hell they want to say. And even though I don't agree with it, I will die for their right to slag me off if they want to. That's entirely a matter for them there. I personally,
yes,
one of my key advocates in my political party as well, and the Italian constitution, we repudiate war, repudiate violence, and repudiate any strong methods of trying to enforce your will on other people. I repudiate all of those there. I don't like what is going on in the world. I don't like. No. I spoke to Nelson Mandela when he was in Rome here. Really? And I said to him, Mr. Mandela, you could have been out of prison long time after 3 or 4 years. All you had to do was to sign a document to saying, I repudiate violence as a means to political end. That's all that the government, the South African government wanted. He refused to sign it. And his reply to me was, yes, dear boy, it cost me 28 years. Well, those few words, that's all he had to do, to repudiate violence as a means to a political end. And he would have been out of Robben Island, and things would have been different. Maybe he would have not been the president of South Africa. Indeed. But that is what I repudiate. That I do not believe in violence. I don't like what's going on with demonstrations, providing that there's no violence, there's no harm in it. But I don't like any form of violence. But free speech must. And another thing, do you know why you stand on a box at Speaker's Corner in Hyde Park? Do you know why? Shall I tell the viewers?
You tell our viewers why.
Because if you have a box there, you're not on the King's land, and therefore you can speak your mind.
Well, that's fantastic. A lot of people will not know that evidence. And that's the kind of things that you give us and you bring us. Whether people like me or like you or dislike me and dislike you, that doesn't matter. It's all information. And we are offering it out to people to do whatever they wish to do with. That's the whole point about freedom of choice, freedom of thought and opinion.
You know what I told Roman Abramovich, who I know quite well? Whenever you have dinner with him, the last thing he says to you is, remember, Mr. Giovanni, never say I now go to prison. I said to him, Roman, information is king, not money. If you're a billionaire and you don't know someone's coming to kill you, you ain't got shite. He said, very true, very true.
You can't top that, can you? But well, look, you've met these fascinating characters. And to me, you are a fascinating character. And I say that with the utmost of respect, Giovanni. Now, you have just freshly come back from the Venice Film Festival. Tell us a little bit about what was going on with your good self at the Venice Film Festival, please.
Well, the Venice Film Festival was with Jim Sheridan and Donald McIntyre. Jim Sheridan is directing the docu-fiction on me. There is two Italian producers and directors, Vittorio Moroni and Giancarlo D'Arcangelo, who are looking for the TV series of a number of seasons with 10 episodes per season. And let me say that is primarily also thanks to you, because on our last interview, when I told you that I had 269 clients, your comments were, that's a hell of a back catalogue. So you see, it's not about, we can do 10 episodes, 10 seasons of 10 episodes in my life. Not about me, because hell, you know, 100 episodes of my life, I mean, it's longer than what I'm going to live. But if each episode deals with one of my clients, and that's what you brought to the scene there, so I'm grateful to you for that, that then takes it to another level. And that takes it to the level of episodes like The Fugitive, if you can remember.
Yes.
That went on for hundreds and hundreds of, because each episode was about one thing within his life, not him, but within his life and other people. So that is thanks to you. Lord Haw-Haw, of course, is still there. We also have now a fantastic trial of Al-Majid. Now, Al-Majid, you being Scottish, I represented him and made the application for him to be repatriated to Libya. And of course, that was conceded by the Scottish government. The English government would never have done that, you know, but they did there. And we're going to have a trial and appeal as if what would have happened there. And there is a fantastic trailer that's available for that there. Jerome Lynch KC will be prosecuting me, and David Martin Sperry, an eminent barrister, you know, who has been responsible for the downfall of the Midlands Regional Crime Squad. You know, he disbanded them through the number of cases that he won. We will be defending, making an application why his conviction, you know, should be quashed. And we have another one, royal blackmail, the story of Ian Strachan, who I defended, who blackmailed a member of the royal family. And let me tell you, the material that I have on that there is explosive. You know, it reveals the inner functions way back in 2007 to, you know, what was going on with Harry, with William, with Charles, with Camilla, you know, what was going on with Princess Margaret, you know, and all the others. And that's something that I hinted at in one of my TikTok videos there. But that's the 6th episode of there. We also have, it's more an Italian thing. Un viaggio con papà. Me and my son Gianluca will be going by train from South Africa all the way on the west coast of Africa, and he will be grilling me on different things in my life, what I have, what I've done, what I haven't done, what I shouldn't do. We'll be singing a few songs, and also we'll be explaining the history of the railways in that region there. That's for Italian television, there, A Journey with My Father.
When does that start, please, Giovanni? When will that be broadcast?
We're looking at dates for next year on that, you know, on that. I have refused Big Brother or Celebrity Get Me Out, because that I've had enough bloody lockups.
In Italy? Is this in Italy?
In Italy, I refuse those there. I mean, obviously, to have a character like me on there, I understand is attractive, but it's too easy. It's too easy.
Yeah, I mean, you're a precious commodity now, aren't you? You really don't want to be in a hot tub with.
Oh no! Once you've been in with a cage of lions, the most ferocious rabid dog don't scare you.
You get a few of these beautiful Neapolitan women, and you in a hot tub, and it's not fair on you. That's not really justice.
Not a question of fair on me. Is that I am seriously and, you know, properly married.
Of course you are. That's why I'm saying you would be an innocent victim. you would be an innocent victim yet again, and I would come to defend you.
I
I'd come
couldn't get
over
away
to
with that. Let me tell you, with my consort, she's
Of course.
extremely intelligent, very,
Yes.
very beautiful, ex-model, but,
Yes.
extremely beautiful and extremely intelligent, and will not let me get away with any stupidity. That's not that I even
Of
would
course.
try, because you can't. Worse than my mother, almost.
Yes. Well,
and my
God bless your wife and all the women of Italy and all women around the world, for all the great things that they do and putting up with men and all
And
their
without which
foibles.
we wouldn't be here.
Exactly. So, I mean, I think we've covered so much in that time. Is there anything else you'd like to tell our viewers and listeners before we say goodbye?
Yes, just very quickly. There was a case in the 17th century where during the slave trade, 133 slaves were thrown overboard because there was no water. Now, there was an insurance claim. The insurance paid out, and 400 years later, there's still no money for those families there. I've posted it up on Twitter and on Facebook there. It's something that, is disgraceful. It's no good apologizing for what you've done in the past. Apologies don't pay a grocer's bill. You need to cough up. And I would invite, people to research, if they're members of the family, to take legal action against not this bloody Harold Wilson's mob, but this bloody Tory government.
Or reparations? Are we talking reparations?
We are. It's
against
covered.
the British government.
Well, they're the ones that did. I mean, the insurance paid out.
We're broke.
Marcus, the insurance paid out. So they've had the money. It's fraud almost. I know it's probably statute, but someone has to say, look, hold. Apologies are no good. You need money. There's an old saying in Italy, no money does not sing churches the mass.
Well, like on that note, we will thank you once again, the devil's advocate himself, Giovanni Di Stefano, for coming on to Herd Immunity News. Thank you, sir. And we will leave all the links to your projects, to your work, as always. And we look forward to chatting with you again in the near future.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm most obliged.
Thank you.